Final thoughts, Nick, final thoughts. How do we want to close off today's session? Right, I think we've got 5. We do have 5, yes. Oh, why did I jump to the end? Oh, buttons.
It's called destination fixation, Al.
No, I've got a Keychron keyboard, right? It's a TKL, and the button, the end button is right by the arrow. So that's why I pressed it, which is hugely frustrating. Anyway, policies and standards, right? I think it's vitally important that you actually have a standard, or at least a policy that governs your application identities, or at least your application governance inside of your organization. Write that shit down and use it as your Bible, right? Know the stack, Nick?
If you don't know what you've got, how can you manage what you've got, Al? You can't manage what you can't measure. You can't measure what you can't manage. Yeah. You know what I mean. So how do you get this easily if you are doing this with scripts or only Entra ID? So you can do it. It's just a lot harder.
It is much harder because there's no single portal to give you all this information. Profiling, it's important to understand how you deploy applications in your tenant, being able to profile these applications, not only from a risk perspective, but also from what it does and what permissions it needs to access things in your environment. It's the same with life cycles. If you buy a product or you're testing a product and the product runs in your environment, or you're doing a proof of concept and it runs for 6 months, when the project's finished, what do you do with the app? Application lifecycle management, ALM, need to understand what that looks like. And also, when you're updating applications with new features, understand what is required around that. Know your ABCs, right? Not always be closing, but always be checking, because it's a continuous task, right? It's not, oh, I'm going to run this once a month and I'm going to be happy. No, you've got daily, weekly, and monthly tasks that you need to do. And then, Nick, I slipped this one in because you love Zero Trust so much.
I vehemently disagree that we should trust anything because we assume breach. But understand where you're coming from, that you trust the application, but you want to verify it, right?
Well, think about it this way. There's a list of enterprise applications that you could literally go and say, hey, deploy Adobe, right? And Adobe, Fortune 500 company, you kind of trust that when you click the button.
Same like we trust SolarWinds.
I'm not going to win this debate. Trust, but verify. So yes, don't lock all the doors, right, and let nobody in. Allow them in, but make sure that what they're doing inside your house is allowed. All right. And I think we've come to the end of the show, right? Make sure to register. Click on appgovscore.com, fill out the info, review and consent, and get your score. It's free. It's available. If you are using a QR code, you can scan the QR code. It'll do the same thing, and go have a look at where you are when it comes to your Gov score. All right, Q&As. Is there anything in the chat, Nick, that we need to, I'm presenting so I can't see because I'm on a Mac. If I was on a Windows machine, very different experience.
I don't have any questions in the chat. I'm just going to pop over to the Q&A. I would normally ask, Matthew asked, did they, Midnight Blizzard, use a multi-tenant app to go from one tenant to another? It's a great question, and you win today's prize of.
So I think they did. They compromised one tenant and got into another one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they did.
Nick, you've spent a lot of time. I've got a question for you, and I've got a question for the audience as well, right? For the audience, it's really, do you know what's currently deployed from an application perspective in Entra ID? The reason why I ask this is because I don't know what's in my demo tenant, and it's only me. Yeah, it's only me that has access to that demo tenant. I don't know. There's applications that you deploy that you typically see when you go to app registrations. And then there's applications that just magically show up. So it's quite scary because I will go to Teams as me and I'll deploy an app and then it shows up, right? So that's the question to the audience. Do you know how many applications you have deployed inside of Entra ID? And then my question to you, Nick, they compromised Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
That's serendipitous, right?
Come at
For me.
I got you.
So would you say that the vulnerabilities inside of Exchange is close to how bad Active Directory is? Because not Exchange Online, I'm talking about Exchange on-prem.
Oh, exchange on premises is just a I believe a good American word for it is a dumpster fire in terms of current vulnerabilities. So within reason, very few people should still be running Exchange on premises if it's not completely patched. And we know that Exchange on premises, just like Active Directory, it's a super old code base. Exchange 2013, believe it or not, had 22 million lines of code. 2019, more code. A lot of it is deep legacy. So people should be getting rid of that, switching it off, and offloading that security risk onto Exchange Online.
All right. Are we going to give it a minute or two? Do you have any questions for me, Nick? Seeing as I've been spending quite a bit of time over the last year looking at these naughty apps that show up and cause havoc in your environment.
So I actually have a question for you as regards, since you are a deep SharePoint guy, what do we care about in the context of SharePoint and application security?
Well, there's a couple of things you can do, right? It's actually not got anything to do with what you do with the service and or application you attach to your tenant, right? And when I say tenant, I'm talking about your Azure environment. Because you get, and if we had to go back to that zero trust slide, right? You get to the risk profile, not only users or desktops, like using Intune, right? Or saying, well, you know, if someone's sitting at a coffee shop in an undisclosed location, deny all, right? You know, verify explicitly all of the zero trust, the tenets of a zero trust. Starting to sound like you. But from a SharePoint perspective, you've got a couple of options, right? One, I suppose, you know, switch on MFA. It's the big thing, right? It's the biggest thing that you need to do. Microsoft reckons you solve 99% of access control problems if you switch on MFA.
True.
The other thing you can do, right, is drop in some form of CASB. Now, I said drop in some form of CASB because I don't just want to talk about Microsoft stuff. I drink the Kool-Aid, but not all of the Kool-Aid. So you can deploy Defender for Cloud Apps or the old MCAS, or you can deploy Netscope, great product. It'll do the same thing, and it will start looking at, you know, how people access the platform, and then based on, you know, some form of rules engine that says, if you downloaded 300 files from your OneDrive and you normally download 20, we're going to restrict access to figure out what's going on. So, you know, it's like Steve Austin, the $6 million man, right? You know, the technology exists to secure not only applications that live inside of your environment, but applications that live outside of your environment. We want you to start with what, you know, they say charity begins at home. Start with what you have currently in your environment. SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, you can push that through Defender for Cloud Apps. You'll get cool telemetry data. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the Defender XDR side as well from a log analytics perspective that will give you rich information, and you can do threat hunting. But you need to get a snapshot of where you are today. And those platforms don't give it to you. So start with the free version, click the button, you know, like, link, subscribe, you know, like a true YouTuber, and get started with you know, improving your, not only your, what is it, cloud security posture management, your application security posture. And I think that's it, Nick. That's it from me. Is that a wrap?
That's it. I don't see that. It's a little bit of white on white there. That's at Enoch
That's
Consulting,
just, you know,
at Nicolas
yeah,
Blank,
so
at Nicolas Pugin. That's at Alistair Pugin. It's been a long night, Al.
You know you wear glasses, right?
I do for a reason.
You know, yeah, and the fact that you're not wearing it right now, it's a clear indication why you need them. So thank you for joining us on this episode of Application Governance and You. Be sure to look out for mails that will be coming from eNow around getting access to not only the slide deck, but also the recording. If you want to get a hold of eNow, you can reach out on Twitter/X, whatever you're calling it today, at eNow Consulting. Nicolas is available at Nicolas Blank on every platform of choice. So I'm sure Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I'm the most active on Twitter. So if you have any questions that you wake up tomorrow morning with, because this is going to haunt you, reach out to me. I'm at Alistair Pugin. And thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the week. Ciao, ciao.